The thunder rolled across the desert like God's own fury, and Jake on Iron Horse. Mackenzie pulled his black stallion to a halt outside the weathered ranch house. Rain pelted his leather duster as he dismounted, spurs jingling against the wooden porch steps. Through the amber glow of the window he glimpsed her, a silhouette that made his chest tighten like a lasso around a wild Mustang. Catalina Delacroix answered the door with a Winchester in her delicate hands, though Jake noticed how those same hands trembled slightly. Her raven hair cascaded over shoulders barely concealed by a white cotton nightgown that clung to her curves like morning dew on desert roses. "State your business, stranger," she commanded, though her voice carried the musical lilt of New Orleans honey. Jake tipped his hat, water dripping from the brim. "Name's Mackenzie, ma'am. My horse threw a shoe about 5 miles back. Saw your light burning and hoped for shelter till this storm passes." Lightning illuminated his rugged features, a jaw carved from granite, eyes the color of storm clouds, and a mouth that promised both danger and salvation. Catalina's breath caught in her throat like a butterfly in a spider's web. "I don't take in drifters," she said, though her resolve wavered like a candle in the wind. "I can pay," Jake replied, his voice rough as sandpaper on silk. "And I'm handy with repairs. Noticed your fence posts leaning like drunk cowboys." Against her better judgment, Catalina stepped aside. As Jake passed, she caught his scent. Leather, tobacco, and something wild that made her secret garden bloom with forbidden thoughts. The interior revealed a woman living alone but proud. Lace curtains, polished furniture, and the lingering aroma of fresh bread spoke of feminine touches in a harsh land. But Jake's trained eye also noticed the loaded pistol on the mantel and the way she kept her distance. "You can sleep in the barn," Catalina said, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. "There's clean hay and—" "Much obliged, ma'am." Jake's eyes never left hers. "Might I trouble you for some of that coffee I smell? Trail's been long and cold." As she poured the steaming brew, their fingers brushed. The contact sent electricity through both of them stronger than the lightning outside. Catalina jerked back as if burned, spilling coffee across the wooden table. "Careful there," Jake murmured, producing a bandana to clean the mess. "Wouldn't want to waste something so precious." The way he said precious made Catalina's knees weak as a newborn colt. She watched his strong hands work, imagining those same hands on her. "I should mention," she said quickly, desperate to break the spell, "I'm recently widowed. My husband died 6 months ago, cholera." Jake's expression softened. "Sorry for your loss, ma'am. Must be hard running this place alone." "I manage." Her chin lifted with fierce pride. "Though the cattle have been restless lately. Something's got them spooked." Outside, a wolf howled, long, mournful, hungry. Catalina shivered, and Jake noticed how the sound made her press closer to the warmth of the stove. "I'll check your perimeter come morning," he offered. "Make sure nothing's threatening your stock." Their eyes met across the small kitchen, and the air grew thick as molasses. The storm raged outside, but inside, a different kind of tempest was brewing. One that would test every boundary Catalina had built around her wounded heart. "The barn's through that door," she whispered, pointing with a trembling finger. Jake nodded, but as he reached the threshold, he turned back. "Mrs. Delacroix? That coffee was the finest I've tasted in years. Sweet as desert honey." After he left, Catalina touched her lips, wondering why his compliment felt like a kiss she'd never received. Dawn broke like a golden egg across the horizon, and Catalina found herself drawn to the barn before she could stop her feet from moving. She told herself she was checking on the stranger's horse, but her racing pulse suggested otherwise. Jake stood shirtless in a shaft of morning sunlight, grooming his stallion with long, practiced strokes. Sweat glistened on his bronzed chest like dewdrops on copper, and Catalina's mouth went dry as the desert sand. His muscles rippled with each movement, telling stories of hard labor and harder living. "Morning, ma'am," he said without turning around, somehow sensing her presence. "Hope I didn't wake you." "I'm an early riser," she managed, though her voice came out breathier than intended. "Always have been." Jake turned, and Catalina's eyes traced the scars crisscrossing his torso, each one a tale of survival in an unforgiving land. A particularly wicked scar ran from his left shoulder to his heart, and she found herself wondering what kind of pain had carved such a mark. "See something interesting?" Jake's voice carried amusement and something darker. Heat flooded Catalina's cheeks. "I brought you breakfast," she said quickly, holding up a basket. "Biscuits and honey, and coffee." "Mighty kind of you." Jake pulled on his shirt, though he left it unbuttoned. "Been a while since a beautiful woman brought me breakfast." The compliment hit her like a shot of whiskey, warm, dangerous, and intoxicating. "I'm not beautiful," she protested. "I'm just a widow trying to survive." Jake stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his storm-gray eyes. "Ma'am, you're about the most beautiful thing I've seen since the sunrise over the Grand Canyon." Catalina's breath hitched. No man had spoken to her like this since never. Her late husband had been kind but practical, treating her more like a business partner than a woman to be desired. "You shouldn't say such things," she whispered. "Why? Because you're in mourning?" Jake's voice gentled. "How long you planning to bury yourself alive, Catalina?" The use of her first name sent shivers down her spine like fingers trailing silk. "That's not... I can't..." "Can't what? Feel alive again?" Before she could answer, a commotion erupted from the direction of the cattle pen. Shouts and the thunder of hooves filled the air. Jake grabbed his gun belt and ran outside, Catalina close behind. 3 men on horseback were driving off a dozen of her best cattle, rustlers. Jake's Colt appeared in his hand like magic, and he fired 3 shots in rapid succession. 2 rustlers tumbled from their saddles, but the third escaped with half her herd. "You're hurt," Catalina gasped, noticing blood seeping through Jake's shirt. "Just a graze," he said, but his face had gone pale. Back in the house, Catalina insisted on tending his wound. As she cleaned the bullet graze on his shoulder, her fingers trembled against his heated skin. Jake's breathing grew ragged, and not from pain. "Catalina," he said roughly, "you're playing with fire." "Maybe I want to get burned," she whispered, surprising herself with her boldness. Jake's hand covered hers, stilling her ministrations. "You don't know what you're saying." "Don't I?" She looked up at him, her green eyes blazing with newfound courage. "I've been dead inside for months, Jake. You make me feel alive." The tension between them stretched taut as a bowstring. Jake's thumb traced her cheek, and Catalina leaned into his touch like a flower seeking sunlight. "There's something you should know," Jake said, his voice heavy with secrets. "Those rustlers, they weren't random. They were looking for something they think you have." Catalina's blood turned to ice. "What are you talking about?" Jake's eyes grew distant, haunted. "Your husband, he wasn't just a rancher, was he?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a dying fire, and Catalina realized her quiet life was about to become very complicated indeed. The revelation hit Catalina like a bronco's kick to the chest. She stepped back from Jake, her hands shaking as she pressed them against the kitchen table for support. "What do you know about my husband?" she demanded, though her voice barely rose above a whisper. Jake's expression grew grim as winter storm clouds. Thomas Delacroix wasn't just running cattle, Catalina. He was running gold. Confederate gold that went missing after the war. The room spun around her like a dust devil. That's impossible. Thomas was a simple rancher. He never mentioned $250,000 in gold coins, hidden somewhere on this property. Jake's voice was gentle but relentless. The kind of fortune that makes men kill without hesitation. Catalina sank into a chair, her world crumbling like a house of cards in a desert wind. You're lying. You have to be. Jake knelt beside her, his calloused hands covering her trembling ones. I wish I was, darling. But those rustlers, they're working for Colonel Marcus Steele. He's been hunting that gold for 3 years. How do you know all this? Suspicion crept into her voice like poison into a well. Jake's jaw tightened, and for a moment she saw something dangerous flicker in his eyes. Because I used to work for him, until I discovered what kind of man he really was. The confession hung between them like a loaded gun. Catalina jerked her hands away, betrayal burning in her chest hotter than a branding iron. You're one of them, she breathed. You came here to steal from me. No. Jake's voice cracked like a whip. I came here to warn you. Steele's men are closing in, and when they arrive, they won't be as gentle as those rustlers. Catalina stood abruptly, pacing to the window like a caged wildcat. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly, offering no escape from the nightmare her life had become. Even if what you're saying is true, she said, I don't know where any gold is hidden. Thomas never told me anything. Jake studied her face with the intensity of a hawk watching prey. Think, Catalina. Did he have any special places? Somewhere he went alone? Maybe somewhere he told you never to go? A memory surfaced like a bubble in still water. The old mine shaft on the North Ridge. Thomas had always forbidden her from going there, claiming it was dangerous. But now, there might be a place, she admitted reluctantly. Jake's eyes lit up like stars in the desert night. Where? Before she could answer, the sound of approaching horses filled the air. Through the window, Catalina saw a cloud of dust on the horizon. Too many riders to be friendly visitors. They're here, Jake said grimly, checking his weapons. Steele's found us. Panic clawed at Catalina's throat like a wild animal. What do we do? Jake grabbed her shoulders, his grip firm and reassuring. We run, but first we get that gold. It's the only thing that'll buy us safe passage out of this territory. I can't leave my home, she protested, though even as she said it, she knew staying meant death. Your home won't matter if you're dead, Jake said bluntly. And Catalina, once we find that gold, we'll have enough to start over anywhere, together. The word together sent a thrill through her despite the danger. In the space of 2 days, this mysterious cowboy had awakened feelings she'd thought buried with her husband. Why should I trust you? She asked, though her heart already knew the answer. Jake's hand cupped her face with surprising tenderness. Because I'd rather die than see you hurt. And because... He hesitated, vulnerability flickering across his rugged features. Because I'm falling in love with you, Catalina. Hard and fast as a summer storm, the confession stole her breath away. Before she could respond, Jake's lips claimed hers in a kiss that tasted of desperation and desire. Her secret garden bloomed with sensations she'd never experienced, and she melted against him like butter in the desert sun. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard as racehorses. The mine, she gasped. It's on the North Ridge. But Jake, if we're going to do this, if we're going to run together... She looked into his eyes, seeing her future reflected there. Don't derramo lady dentro when we find that gold. We'll need every coin to disappear. Jake's grin was wicked as sin. Darlin', I promise you'll get every drop of what's coming to you. The thunder of approaching hooves grew louder, and they both knew their time for talking was over. The mine shaft yawned before them like the mouth of some ancient beast, dark and forbidding against the crimson sunset. Catalina's heart hammered against her ribs as Jake lit a torch, the flame casting dancing shadows on the rocky walls. "Stay close," he murmured, his free hand finding hers in the darkness. These old mines can be treacherous. They descended into the earth's belly, the air growing cooler with each step. Catalina's breathing echoed off the walls, mixing with the distant sound of dripping water. After what felt like an eternity, Jake's torch illuminated a wooden door set into the rock face. "This is it," Catalina whispered, recognizing Thomas's handiwork in the careful construction. Jake shouldered the door open and they stepped into a hidden chamber. The torchlight revealed stacks of wooden crates, each one bearing the Confederate seal. Jake pried open the nearest crate and golden coins spilled out like captured sunlight. "Sweet Jesus," he breathed. "There's enough here to buy half of California." Catalina stared at the fortune her husband had hidden, feeling like she was seeing a stranger's secret life. "All this time I thought we were poor. I mended clothes by candlelight while sitting on a king's ransom." "Thomas was protecting you," Jake said gently. "If word had gotten out..." A sound from the mine entrance cut him off, the scrape of boots on stone. They weren't alone. "Well, well," a cultured voice echoed down the shaft. "Jake Mackenzie, I should have known you'd lead me right to it." Colonel Marcus Steele emerged from the shadows with 6 armed men, his silver hair gleaming in the torchlight. He was handsome in a cold, predatory way that made Catalina's skin crawl. "Hello, Marcus," Jake said calmly, though his hand moved to his gun. "Still collecting other people's property, I see." "That gold belongs to the Confederacy," Steele replied smoothly. "I'm simply reclaiming it for the cause." "The war's been over for years," Catalina found her voice. "That gold belongs to no one now." Steele's pale eyes fixed on her with uncomfortable intensity. "Ah, the lovely widow. You know, my dear, you could make this much easier on yourself. Join me and I'll ensure you're well. Compensated for your cooperation." The way he said compensated made Catalina feel like she needed a bath. "I'd rather kiss a rattlesnake." Steele's laugh was cold as winter wind. "How unfortunate. Jake, I'm disappointed. I trained you better than to let sentiment cloud your judgment." "You trained me to be a killer," Jake replied. "But you never taught me to be a man without honor." "Honor?" Steele's voice dripped contempt. "Honor doesn't buy bullets or bread. But that gold buys power." The standoff stretched taut as a bowstring. Catalina could feel the violence building in the air like pressure before a thunderstorm. Then Jake moved. His Colt appeared in his hand faster than lightning, and the mine shaft erupted in gunfire. Jake dove behind a crate, pulling Catalina with him as bullets whined off the stone walls. "The back tunnel!" Jake shouted over the gunfire. "There's another way out." They ran deeper into the mine, Jake's torch casting wild shadows as bullets chased them through the darkness. Behind them, Steele's voice roared orders to his men. The back tunnel was narrow and treacherous, forcing them to crawl in places. Catalina's dress tore on the rough stone, but she pressed on, driven by Jake's urgent whispers of encouragement. They emerged into starlight on the far side of the ridge, gasping and covered in dust. Jake's horse waited where he'd hidden it, saddlebags bulging with as much gold as they'd been able to grab. "It's not all of it," Jake said, helping Catalina onto the horse behind him. "But it's enough." As they rode hard across the desert, Catalina pressed against Jake's back, feeling his strength and warmth through his shirt. The danger, the adrenaline, the promise of a new life together. It all combined into an intoxicating cocktail that made her secret garden bloom with desire. "Jake," she whispered against his ear as they paused to rest the horse by a hidden spring. "I can't wait anymore. I need you to show me what it means to be alive again." Jake turned in the saddle, his eyes dark with want. "Catalina, are you sure? Once we cross this line—" "I'm sure," she breathed, her hands already working at his shirt buttons. "But remember what I said about the light. We can't afford any complications right now." Jake's grin was pure sin as he dismounted and lifted her down. "Darlin', I promise to be very, very careful about where I spill my treasures." Under the desert stars, with danger behind them and freedom ahead, Catalina finally understood what it meant to feel the thunder in the desert. And as Jake's hands worshipped her body with the reverence of a man touching something sacred, she knew she'd never be the same widow who'd answered her door to a stranger in a storm. The desert wind carried their whispered promises across the sand, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled, wild, free, and utterly alive.